The fisherman who saved a drowning woman, then discovered she wasn't human. The night the river almost swallowed the moon, Obinna was still out in his canoe. Wind howled through the tall reeds, and the current slapped against his wooden paddle. The storm had come earlier than the elders predicted. A furious one. Born from the heart of the clouds, Obinna wasn't meant to be on the water that night. But he had lost 2 of his fishing nets earlier that day. And for a man whose living came from the river, losing nets meant sleeping hungry. So he went back, alone. The river roared like an angry beast, hissing and swirling, but Obinna was no stranger to her moods. He knew her depths, her silence, and her temper. So he thought. Then, through the noise of the storm, he heard something else, a cry. Faint human, a woman's voice. He froze. The cry came again, this time closer, a desperate gasp, a plea for life. Obinna turned his lantern toward the sound, and there, between the waves, a hand rose from the dark water, pale against the night. Without a thought, he dropped his paddle and plunged in. The water was cold, biting through his skin, heavy with the force of the rain. He reached the hand, small, trembling, and pulled with all his strength. "Hold on!" he shouted. "Hold on! I've got you!" The river fought him, dragging both of them under. He kicked upward, lungs burning, until at last his head broke the surface. Gasping, he hauled the woman toward his canoe and heaved her inside. She lay still, her hair tangled like riverweed, her body limp. Obinna tilted her face toward his lantern light. For a moment, his breath caught. Her skin shimmered faintly, like moonlight trapped beneath water. Her lips were pale, her lashes long, and around her neck hung a shell necklace, the kind no one in the village wore anymore. "Who are you?" he whispered. But she didn't answer. He pressed his ear to her chest. A heartbeat faint. But there. Obinna laid his cloak over her and began to row back to shore, his arms trembling with effort. Rain whipped his face. The river churned behind them as if angry that he had taken something that belonged to her. By the time he reached the bank, dawn was creeping over the horizon. He looked at the woman again. A single droplet of water slid from her hair down her cheek. Not rain, but a tear. And though the storm had passed, the air around them still whispered. It felt like the river was watching. Obinna carried the woman into his small hut, a thatched shelter by the riverside. He laid her gently on a woven mat near his hearth and lit a fire. The orange glow flickered across her face, and for the first time, warmth returned to her skin. When her eyes opened, Obinna almost dropped the bowl of water in his hands. They were deep and blue, like the heart of the river. Not the brown of the people he knew, but something otherworldly, calm yet endless. "Where am I?" she asked softly, her voice fragile, like the first ripple after a stone is thrown. "You're safe," Obinna said. "I found you in the river." Her brows furrowed. "The river?" She touched her necklace, a string of small white shells with one missing in the center. "I don't remember." Obinna studied her. There was no mark of injury, no sign of struggle, just that necklace, and an air of quiet sadness. "You should rest," he said. "The river doesn't easily return what it takes." He cooked yam and fish broth, feeding her by the fire. She ate slowly, watching the flames like she was seeing them for the first time. Outside, the rain eased, and frogs began to sing again. By morning, word had spread. Villagers came to Obinna's hut, whispering and crossing themselves. "No woman comes from the river alive," they said. "He has brought home a spirit." Another spat on the ground. "Mark my words, nothing good comes from the river at night. Obinna ignored them. The woman needed warmth, not fear. He spoke gently to her every day, but she never remembered her name. She would sit by the door, staring at the river like it was a memory she couldn't reach. Sometimes she would hum, strange, haunting tunes that made even the birds go quiet. At night, when Obinna's lantern flickered, she would whisper, "I hear her calling," a voice from below the water. "Dreams," Obinna would say, "only dreams." One evening, as they ate by firelight, he said quietly, "If you have no name, then let me give you one." She looked up, curious. "I'll call you Nanaji," he said. "It means gift of the water, because that's what you are, a gift the river gave me." Naji smiled for the first time. The firelight danced in her eyes, and for a moment, the room felt brighter. From that night onward, she helped him mend nets, fetch water, and sing songs to the moon. She moved like someone learning to live again, gentle, curious, kind. But even as she laughed, there were times her gaze drifted toward the riverbank, and her fingers would touch that missing shell at her neck, as though it whispered secrets only she could hear. The days that followed moved like slow ripples across still water. Each dawn, Obinna rose before the sun, pushing his canoe into the calm river, while Nanaji watched from the doorway, her hair wrapped in his old cloth, her eyes soft with worry. At first, she would only wait and hum while he worked. But soon, she began to follow him bare feet on the wet sand, laughter slipping between her words as she tried to help him pull the nets. She didn't know how to row, yet she learned. She didn't know the river's moods, yet she seemed to understand it, when to be silent, when to listen. Sometimes, she would dip her hands into the water and whisper in a tongue Obinna did not know. And though her words were strange, the fish began to come. Each time Obinna threw his net, it returned full. Before long, the villagers noticed. "The man who rescued the river woman now has nets that never go empty," they said. Some watched with envy, others with fear. "Perhaps he has married a spirit," an old woman whispered near the market. "Such unions bring riches, but also sorrow." But Obinna paid no heed. In Nanaji's presence, he felt lighter, as though his burdens floated away with each of her smiles. In the evenings, they sat by the fire, telling stories. Obinna spoke of his mother, who had died when he was a boy, and of the river that raised him. Nanaji would listen with quiet wonder, her head tilted like a child hearing the world's secrets for the first time. Then one night, when the moon was full and silver light spilled across the water, she asked him softly, "Do you ever get lonely?" Obinna hesitated. He had lived most of his life alone, talking more to his nets than to people. But when he looked into her eyes, the truth slipped out. "Not anymore." A smile touched her lips, small, but it glowed like dawn breaking over darkness. That night, they did not speak again. The silence between them was tender, heavy with something unspoken but understood. By the next moon, even the village changed. Children laughed louder, and the market brimmed with fish again. It was as if the river itself had blessed them. People began to visit Obinna's hut, pretending to buy fish, but mostly to catch a glimpse of the mysterious woman who never aged, whose skin always glowed faintly like she was bathed in hidden light. Some came with gifts, a calabash of palm wine, a woven cloth, hoping to earn her favor. Others came to stare and whisper, but Naji never seemed to notice. She smiled kindly, thanked them, and always returned to her chores, grinding yam, washing clothes, or sitting quietly by the riverside, humming her soft, watery tune. Still, one thing never changed: her connection to the river. Every evening she would walk to its edge and place her feet in the water. The river would ripple, as if greeting her. Obinna would watch from a distance, torn between awe and fear. "Don't stay too close," he would warn. And she would turn, smiling, "How can I fear what I once was part of?" The words puzzled him, but before he could ask what she meant, she would change the subject, her laughter breaking the tension like sunlight after rain one evening. As thunder rolled far away and the scent of rain filled the air, Nanaji was weaving nets inside the hut. Obinna stood at the doorway, watching her. The flicker of firelight played on her skin, and for the first time he realized how deeply she had become a part of him quietly. Without warning, he spoke before his courage faded. "Nanaji," he said, "you have given me more joy than I have ever known. I don't know who you are or where you came from, but I know this. I want you to stay." Naji looked up slowly, her fingers pausing on the net. Her eyes softened, but there was sorrow in them too. "Stay," she whispered, "even if one day the river comes for me." "The river will not take you," Obinna said. "It took enough already. It won't take you again." She smiled faintly, setting down her net. "Then, let your words bind me," she said, "and if they are true, let the river bear witness." Outside, lightning flashed across the clouds, and a single drop of rain landed between them as though the heavens had answered her. From that night, they lived as one. She became his wife in all but name, tending his home, cooking his meals, and greeting him with laughter when he returned from fishing. And Obinna became a man transformed, his once quiet hut filled with warmth and song. The river that once threatened now seemed to bless. And in the still of night, when the moon shone on her face, he would whisper, "Perhaps the gods made you from water and gave you to me so I'd never thirst for love again." Naji would smile, tracing his cheek with her cool fingers, her touch both real and unreal, like a dream refusing to fade. But sometimes, in her sleep, she would murmur words from another world, her hand clutching the broken shell on her necklace. And in those moments, the river outside would stir just slightly, as if it remembered her name. The following morning, the village was abuzz with whispers. An elder, Mama Ifeoma, had arrived from the neighboring town. She was bent with age, her skin like cracked earth, but her eyes sparkled with a sharpness that unsettled even the bravest men. Word spread quickly. She had heard of Obinna's miraculous nets and the woman who came from the river. The villagers gathered around the hut, murmuring nervously. Mama Ifeoma entered quietly, her gaze fixed on Naji, and the air seemed to chill. "You are not entirely of this world," she said softly, more to herself than anyone else. Then louder, "Child, do you know the danger that follows you?" Naji flinched, clutching her shell necklace. She had never heard the elder speak like that, as if she could see beyond the flesh. Obinna stepped forward, protective. "She is my guest," he said firmly. "She has done nothing wrong." The elder looked at him, then back at Naji. "Wrong?" she repeated, her voice now sharp. "No, boy, but the river does not forget its children, and one day it will come for her." The villagers gasped. Some stepped back, crossing themselves or whispering prayers. Obinna's heart pounded. "You mean she's in danger?" Mama Ifeoma nodded slowly. "Yes, and if she does not return to the river willingly, it will demand her in its own way, with storms, floods, or worse, she is a bride promised long ago, before she even walked among humans." Naji's hands tightened around the shell. "I do not remember," she said softly. "I do not know this place. I only remember the river and the feeling of being called." The elder placed a wrinkled hand on Naji's shoulder. Then listen carefully. You may choose to stay with him, but the river will not let go. A prophecy was spoken. The bride who is taken by human hands will face a choice love, or the depths. You must prepare for what is coming. Obinna felt a chill creep along his spine. He looked at Naji, her face pale but calm, like a gentle current hiding a deep, dangerous undertow. Will she be safe? He asked, his voice low. Mama Ifeoma's eyes met his. Safe? She echoed. No, only ready. Love alone will not protect her. That night, the river raged. The wind howled through the trees, and thunder shook the small hut. Naji could hear the river whispering her name, louder than ever before. She pressed the shell to her chest, tears running down her cheeks. Obinna stayed by her side. I won't let anything happen to you, he whispered. She turned to him, eyes wide, fear mingling with longing. I don't know what I am, or what is coming, but I am afraid, and I do not want to leave you. He took her hand, holding it tightly. Then we face it together. Outside, the river's current shimmered unnaturally. Something moved beneath the surface, dark, serpentine shapes that pulsed like living shadows. The villagers slept uneasily. In the distance, Mama Ifeoma's warning echoed through the night. Love may bind hearts, but destiny cannot be broken. By dawn, Obinna awoke to silence. Naji was gone. The hut smelled of wet earth and fresh river water. On the floor lay only the shell necklace, glinting faintly. He ran to the riverbank. The water churned, foam curling like fingers reaching for the sky. And then a faint voice floated over the river wind. Obinna, I am here, but I cannot stay. Obinna ran. Every step was soaked with rain, his heart hammering like the drums of war. Naji, he cried, voice cracking against the storm. The villagers' warnings echoed faintly in his mind, but he did not stop. He could not. The river before him churned like a living beast, waters rising and swirling, catching the moonlight in chaotic silver patterns. And then he saw them glowing footprints etched upon the wet sand, leading into the heart of the river itself. Obinna swallowed his fear and followed each step into the shallow edge, made the waves writhes, twisting as though alive. Shapes rose from the river serpents coiled in liquid motion, hands reaching, grasping at the air. His chest tightened, but he pressed onward. And there she was, Naji, standing tall in the middle of the river, her hair flowing like silver threads spun from the moon. Her skin glimmered brighter than ever before, as if the river itself had poured its soul into her. The river's surface shuddered violently. A deep, booming voice rose from its depths, carrying through the storm. Naji's eyes met Obinna's, torn between the human world that had given her warmth and laughter, and the watery domain that had birthed her. She stepped slightly forward, and the river swirled in protest, towering waves threatening to drag her back into its depths. Naji, I do not care what the river is. I love you. I will protect you. Live with me. Share your life with me. Please. He waded into the water, ignoring the villagers shouting from the banks, ignoring the chilling surge of the river. Each step brought him closer to her, every wave lashing against him like a warning. The river's fury intensified, spinning in whirlpools and surging higher. Yet, amidst the chaos, Obinna's voice rang clear, unwavering. I love you, he said again, louder, stronger, heart bare and unguarded. I will never let you go. Naji trembled. Her glowing eyes flickered between the raging river and the man who had shown her kindness, warmth, and love. the storm seemed to pause, as if the universe itself held its breath. The river roared once more, a final surge of power, but slowly, reluctantly, it began to calm. Naji's face softened, a tear traced a silver line down her cheek. She reached for Obinna, hands trembling, light radiating from her like dawn breaking over storm clouds. In that moment, the river's challenge was laid bare. Love demanded courage, and courage demanded sacrifice. Obinna had risked everything: life, safety, reason for the woman who had captured his heart. And Naji was no longer just the river's child. The storm began to abate. The water settled into gentle ripples, glowing faintly under the moon. Naji and Obinna stood together, drenched, hearts beating in synchronization, the supernatural and human worlds trembling at the edge of their choice. And so, the river's challenge was met not with fear, not with flight, but with the purest courage of the human heart. Yet, even as calm returned, a quiet question lingered. Would the river finally release its child, or demand one last sacrifice? The river roared louder than the storm that had passed, waves slapping the banks as if the waters themselves were alive. Obinna's heart pounded, each beat echoing in time with the violent thrash of the currents. There, in the center of the river, stood Naji. Her hair flowed like molten silver, catching the first rays of dawn, and her eyes shone brighter than any jewel. Yet they held uncertainty, a silent battle between duty and desire. "Naji!" Obinna cried, wading deeper into the river, water curling around his knees, then chest, then shoulders. He ignored the villagers' shouts, the fear etched on every face behind him. "I will not leave you to this alone." The river surged violently, forming serpentine shapes, twisting and curling toward them ghostly hands, like the fingers of forgotten spirits reached out, sparkling droplets glinting in the morning sun. And then a voice, booming and melodic, filling the air as if the river itself spoke. "Child of my depths, will you choose your love or return to me?" Naji's gaze wavered, glancing between Obinna and the hypnotic pull of the river. Her hands trembled, the shell necklace she had worn from the very beginning reflecting the rising sun. She remembered flashes of memory that came unbidden, unstoppable, dancing beneath the water in moonlit grottos, voices chanting promises she had once made long before she became human, and the weight of centuries presses on her spirit. The river's voice echoed again, gentle yet unyielding. Sacrifice is required. One must give what is most precious. Only then can the chosen remain among mortals. Obinna felt the chill of fear, but his eyes never left hers. Without hesitation, he stepped forward further into the river. Waves licked at his shoulders, water biting at his chest, yet his voice rang clear. "Naji!" he shouted, his tone carrying all the courage he could summon. "If you cannot stay, I will dive into these waters myself. I offer you my life, my heart, my everything. Just remain with me, please." Naji's tears, glimmering like tiny diamonds, fell into the river. The water hissed as if tasting each drop, each memory and heartbeat she poured into it. She shook her head, fear and love warring within her chest. "Obinna, I cannot let you die for me." But Obinna pressed on, stepping closer until the river lapped at his chin. "Then trust me," he said simply, his eyes steady, unwavering. "I love you. That is all I offer and all I ask. We will face whatever comes together." For a moment, silence. Even the waves seemed to pause, the world holding its breath. Then, as if the river had understood, it raged one final time higher, brighter, and sparkling with 1,000 colors like sunlight fractured on diamonds, and Nanaji understood what she had to do. She lifted her hands, the water swirling around her fingers, shaping luminous arcs into the sky. "No," she whispered to the river, "I will not return fully, but I will remain human. I will live, love, and remember, and yet I will never forget my origin." The river thrashed once more, violently, as if testing her resolve. Then, like a sigh of wind across the plains, it calmed. A shimmering mist floated above the water's surface, tiny droplets suspended like stars caught in the morning light. And from its depths, a faint voice echoed, "Love endures, but never forgets your origin." Naji collapsed into Obina's arms, exhausted, trembling. The water's power had tested her, had demanded a price, but she had chosen love, the one thing no river, no curse, no centuries and old destiny could take from her. Obina held her close, feeling her warmth seep into his chest, grounding him. Her hair, still silver, brushed against his cheek, yet her eyes, soft and human now, reflected the dawn. The villagers watched in awe, whispers floating over the calm river. She remains the river have accepted her choice. Together, they stepped out of the water, their feet wet, but their hearts brimming with a new, unshakable bond. The shell necklace, cracked but still gleaming faintly, hung around Naji's neck as a reminder of the river's eternal watch. Every drop that fell from it shimmered like liquid memory, binding past and present, water and earth, spirit and human heart. Obina looked down at her, voice low but steady. "You chose me." Naji smiled, softly, brushing water from his shoulder. "I chose love," she whispered, "and in choosing love, I did not abandon who I am." The river lay quiet now, reflecting the rising sun. Mist drifted lazily along the banks, catching the first golden light of day. Somewhere in its depths, something flickered, a reminder that Naji's connection to the water was unbroken, a secret link that would forever hum beneath the surface of her human life. And so, standing hand in hand, the fisherman and the bride from the river faced the dawn, two hearts intertwined. One mortal, one once mystical, bound together by choice, courage, and love that neither river nor prophecy could undo. The morning sun spilled gold across the village as Naji stepped onto the familiar path leading home. Each step left a faint shimmer in the dew-laden earth, her wet hair catching the light like strands of molten silver. The villagers, drawn by the spectacle of the river's calm after the night's turmoil, had gathered silently along the banks and the village edge, eyes widened, mouths parted, whispers floating on the breeze, some in awe, others tinged with fear. Obina ran to her side, water sloshing around his ankles, and embraced her tightly. "You came back," he whispered, relief and wonder intertwined in his voice. Naji smiled, her chest heaving slightly, heart still racing from the river's test. "I did," she replied softly. "I am here, and I am yours." Though the river had demanded a sacrifice, the choice had been hers, a gift of human love and loyalty granted without losing her essence. Naji's shell necklace, cracked but still gleaming faintly, rested against her collarbone. It was a symbol, a link to the depths that had shaped her, a reminder that part of her spirit would always belong to the river life. In the village resumed, yet it was subtly transformed. Nanaji adapted quickly, learning the ways of human life with grace. But she carried something no mortal had: knowledge of the river's moods, the hidden places fish gathered currents that promised safety or danger. She shared this wisdom quietly, teaching villagers new methods of fishing and watercraft care that increased their yield, and kept them safe from storms. Those who had once whispered fears now approached with reverence. At night, she would sit by the riverbank, feeling its pulse beneath her fingertips. Sometimes she heard it whispering faintly, like an old friend speaking in riddles. The sounds of the village blended with the river's song, a harmony of earth and water, human and mystical. Naji had walked the line between worlds and returned not broken, but whole. Obinna and Naji's bond grew stronger each day. Their shared trials had created something deeper than affection, a connection forged in courage and trust, tested by nature and spirit alike. The villagers watched as they worked side by side, a living example of love's enduring power. Children followed them to the river, learning the songs Obinna once taught Naji, while Naji guided them, teaching patience and respect for both river and earth. The village elder, who had once warned of the river's dangers, now spoke with a softened voice. "The river has chosen well," he said to those gathered one morning. "She brings blessings, knowledge, and a reminder. Kindness to the lost opens doors to what is unseen." And though Naji's life was now fully among humans, the duality of her being remained a quiet wonder. The shell necklace, warm against her chest, caught the sunlight and shimmered with a faint, otherworldly glow. It told a story only she could understand, of love, of sacrifice, of the river that had shaped her past and blessed her present. On the riverbank, one morning, Naji stood with Obinna as the waters reflected the rising sun. Her gaze swept the gentle waves, a smile curling across her lips. "I am both of this world and another," she whispered, softly, so only Obinna could hear. "And that is enough." Obinna took her hand, squeezing it gently. "It is more than enough," he replied. Together they turned toward the village, hearts steady and eyes bright. The villagers, once uncertain and fearful, now looked upon Naji as both a miracle and a guide. The river, calm and gleaming, held its mysteries close, yet in its quiet it seemed to approve. The days that followed were filled with laughter, lessons, and small miracles. Fish returned in abundance, crops thrived near the water, and the village prospered under Naji's guidance. Her presence had reshaped the world around her, not through force, but through the gentle power of knowledge, love, and enduring mystery. And at night, when the world was still and the stars reflected in the river, Naji would touch her necklace and remember. Her life was hers to live, her love hers to nurture. And yet the river would always be whispering, watching, waiting. The villagers often said, in hushed reverence, that kindness and courage could bridge the divide between worlds. And in the heart of the village, by the edge of the river, a fisherman and the bride from the river proved it true. Every single day, months had passed since the river's trial, yet the memory of that fateful night lingered in the hearts of all who had witnessed it. The village thrived under the gentle rhythm of river and earth, and at its center stood Obinna and Naji, now husband and wife. Their small hut had grown into a warm home, adorned with simple carvings of fish and flowing water, a tribute to the river that had shaped their destinies. The river itself seemed to celebrate their union. In the early morning light, its surface sparkled like scattered diamonds, reflecting the warmth of the sun. Occasionally, ripples would shift in strange patterns, almost as if the water remembered Naji's steps, her presence, her choices. Children who played along the banks whispered about the shimmering glows they saw at night, claiming the river was alive with magic. The villagers, once fearful of the unknown, now spoke of Naji with admiration. She taught them patience, kindness, and the mysteries of the river where fish hid, which herbs healed, and how to read the currents for safety. The story of the bride from the river became legend, told beside fires, under starlit skies. Children gathered eagerly, eyes wide, imagining the silver-haired woman who had walked between worlds. But even as her life among humans blossomed, subtle reminders of her mystical origin remained. On quiet nights, the river would glow faintly, a gentle luminescence that mirrored the light of her necklace. Naji would watch, her gaze soft, a serene smile curling her lips. Though she had chosen life on land, the river's song still called to her, a reminder that she was both of this world and another. Obinna, standing beside her, marveled at the balance she had found. Love had not only bridged their hearts, but also brought harmony to the village. Yet, in her eyes, he sometimes glimpsed the depth of waters unseen, the wisdom of a being that had once belonged entirely to the river. It was a quiet magic, one that spoke of connection, patience, and respect for forces greater than oneself. Even in her daily life, small miracles seemed to follow. Crops thrived near the water's edge, fish swam in abundance, and those who worked the river found it easier to read its moods, guided by the lessons Naji shared. She had become more than a legend. She was a bridge between worlds, a living symbol of courage, love, and the enduring bond between nature and humankind. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the river in shades of gold and violet, Naji stood at the water's edge. Her hands rested lightly on the shell necklace that had survived the storm, and the prophecy she breathed in the scent of flowing water, feeling its gentle pull on her spirit. Turning to Obinna, she whispered, "No matter where life takes us, this river, this life, it is part of me." Obinna smiled, taking her hand, and together they watched the river shimmer in the fading light. Children's laughter echoed from the village, mingling with the gentle lapping of waves. And as night fell, faint glows danced across the water, subtle but unmistakable, as if the river itself were winking at the world. A secret only a few would ever truly understand. The villagers would tell the story for generations, a tale of a fisherman who showed kindness to the lost, of a mysterious bride from the river, and of love so strong that it could bridge worlds. They would speak of courage, of sacrifice, and of the gentle power of nature that must be respected. And at the edge of the river, in the quiet moments between day and night, Naji would smile softly, eyes reflecting the glimmering water. Her heart belonged to both worlds, her legacy a reminder that love endures, that destiny is alive, and that sometimes the most extraordinary stories are born from the simplest acts of kindness. The river whispered its approval, and the village slept peacefully, forever touched by the memory of the bride who came from its depths.